oh yeah, this is a scam, there's no future, it's backed by no, look, okay. And you've seen how Bitcoin was criticized and so on. And then a few years later, you have BlackRock. Anybody in their right mind who's done finance cannot challenge the power of distributed ledger technologies to usher decentralized finance and a more reliable, efficient system to deliver capital. And it's always a battle of systems. Power is what you call autotelic. What does that mean? Is that its only purpose is to maintain itself.
Going back to the narratives that we were discussing. So usually we see these big investment banks, consulting firms coming out with these huge reports, and they usually talk about these emerging markets. So what do you think about that? How exactly do you term an emerging market? How do you know when the market has emerged? Because these are very crucial reports, right? Based on which the rest, it depends, it kind of sets tone for where the money will go for the next coming days. So what do you think about that terming?
Let's go back in history.
Yes.
It started with the concept of the third world, right?
Okay, yeah.
It started with the concept of the third world that started actually during the colonization, okay? So in the 60s, late 50s, you had the Bandung Conference where people like Nasser Soekarno met together and put together this collective, which is the conference of the unaligned, right? And then from a political concept leading to independence for many countries. I think India was 1947.
Yeah.
And then you had like other countries in the 50s, Morocco 1966 or 68, and many African countries in the early 60s, between 60 and 62, Guinea in 1958. So guess what? Suddenly, we moved from a duopolar world, right? Capitalism versus communism, post-Second World War, to, guess what? Those guys now want to be independent. And they kind of come together as a group. Okay, let's call them the third world, right?
Yes.
So it's a bit of a reminder at the times of the revolutions, especially the French Revolution, where you had the church, the nobility, and the third state, which were the masses, right? So now when you kind of put things together, third world, third state, masses, okay, fascinating. And it evolved, and then people started saying, so economically, we can't really say the third world, it's actually the underdeveloped countries. And that was the terms in the 70s. So if they're underdeveloped, we really have to go and help them. Right? They're underdeveloped. Let's do charity. Let's put aid, not trade, and a lot of those things. And but what started happening also is that people started having a voice, right? And underdeveloped doesn't sound great. So there's a need to be politically correct because actually the populations are growing and we need them because those are actually the fast-growing market. Right? So they call it developing countries.
Yes.
Okay. Right? And then developing, it still means you're not developed.
Yeah.
You're on your way, but you're not there. That's why the psychological term needing to it. So, okay. So emerging countries sounds better because we're actually going to have to do business with them. So we need to kind of somehow show that we don't look down upon them and emerging countries. And then came a very interesting concept called BRICS. Okay. And that was the beginning of something different, right? And the BRICS was coined by Goldman Sachs.
Yes.
Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa. Yeah. They didn't agree among themselves to call themselves BRICS. But you have a very prominent historical banking firm who kind of say, okay, actually, when you look at those countries and their fundamentals, they're representing different continents, and they're the powerhouse for the next 20 years. So somehow declared.
Yes.
BRICS, yeah? And do you think because somebody declared, those people started getting together? Maybe not, right? But now look at BRICS today. Yeah, some of the most powerful economies in the world. I think China has overtaken, and then people can accept or reject. But so there is somehow, a denomination that precedes events. And then events react to things to kind of readjust. right?
Yeah.
And then now you have a multipolar world.
Yes.
Right? Where Europe is being let down by America, where somehow the alliances are kind of reshaping. At the end of the day, to your point about you need a McKinsey on a BCG or Goldman Sachs or Moody's or Standard & Poor's to take things in one direction and announce a report or something and everybody follows, right?
Yeah.
So it's like when you go to war, you need to first hear the trumpet. So I call them the trumpeters, right?
Yes.
So nothing to do with President Trump, but anyway, there's a system. There's a system, there are signals, there's infrastructure, and then there are people follow. But the world has changed.
Yeah.
Why?
Truly.
Because it was structured around one single, I would say, decision-making center, right? That would decide when is the right time to kind of go into a particular industry, and there would be a consensus at the top to effectively activate the leading consulting firm, and then activate the leading media, and then activate the leading captains of industries, and then suddenly the whole thing is orchestrated, and the third state follows, right? So that's all I have to say. But this is changing. Why? Because the source of capital is now becoming highly decentralized, right?
Yes.
In the case of Africa, you now have so many alternatives. Did you know that the UAE became the second largest investor in Africa recently? Something you would never have imagined a decade ago, right?
Yeah.
China has still been very on top. You have different types of investors. So it has created alternative partnerships that gives the right to decide and to orientate. And that's why you have this reshaping on the power of the power brokers and brokerage on the continent. So yes, there is a system, there is a structure. And I can tell you, I went into digital assets because I knew that's what the world needs, because it creates an opportunity to have self-sovereignty, decentralized ways to finance projects, opportunities, nations, etc., and where you don't rely on a single failable central party, right? And you've seen how Bitcoin was criticized and so on. And then a few years later, you have BlackRock. Is it a trumpet for them to kind of launch Bitcoin ETF? Maybe not. And then soon you got recently a report from BCG saying, tokenization is going to reach $30 trillion. Then you're going to hear the trumpet louder and louder and louder and louder. And then everybody is now going to go into real world asset tokenization.
Yeah.
And it's going to become, this is the future of finance. The same people who used to say, this is a scam, there's no future, it's backed by no. Look, okay. Now, for me, it's a matter of integrity. I knew that and I'm sure many also knew it, but that didn't have the courage to admit. Anybody in their right mind who's done finance cannot challenge the power of distributed ledger technologies to usher decentralized finance and a more reliable, efficient system to deliver capital. You go against the grain, and I did for a very long time, right? So from you go from hero to zero because you've been this leading investment banker and you've done those deals and you have those great positions, and suddenly you go against the grain and say, actually, the old system has to go, right? Or if it doesn't have to go, it has to make place for the new. And nobody hears you, wants to hear you, or is afraid of even engaging with you because what you're saying might be so controversial, but it makes sense, right? And that's the reality. Luckily, times go faster for us, right? Imagine Tesla.
Yes.
The dude, he had to pass away, and only 100 years later is what he did. So our situation is actually better, but it shows a template, a pattern about how much space and volume and voice are we giving for dissonant voices that come with the right intentions to empower and provide a better future for the people, right?
Yeah.
And it's always a battle of systems. And, there's one thing that I learned in philosophy classes in university is like power is what you call autotelic. What does that mean? Is that its only purpose is to maintain itself. It's the same for any system, right? And then once you understand that, you can say it's bad, you can say it's good, but it's nature, right? And then a system can die from within,
Yeah.
Or a better one can emerge and make the old one irrelevant.
Yeah, definitely.
Or both can happen at the same time.
So it's always
watch this space.
It's always in the nature to resist change.